Here's a number that might shock you. The average monthly car payment in the United States has now crossed $750.
A recent survey revealing a record number of car owners are paying thousands of dollars a month or more for their vehicles. According to data from auto sales, nearly 17% of buyers are shelling out $1,000 or more for a monthly car payment, not including the cost of insurance.
That's nearly the same as a mortgage in some towns. To make those payments possible, lenders are offering car loans that stretch 84 months, 7 years. Imagine still paying for a car when it's already rusting, breaking down, and worth a fraction of what you owe. And yet, millions of Americans are signing these contracts. Auto debt in the US has quietly exploded to nearly $1.7 trillion, making it the second largest category of consumer debt, right behind mortgages. Yes, Americans now owe more on their cars than on their student loans. This raises a bigger question. It's not just, why are cars expensive? It's, why are we turning vehicles into debt traps that behave more like mortgages than machines? Cars weren't always like this. A generation ago, if you worked a stable job, you could pay off a car loan in 3 or 4 years, or even buy one outright with cash savings. Today, the story looks very different. Loan terms that used to max out at 36 or 48 months have stretched to 60, 72, and now even 84 months.
A growing auto debt crisis as cars become more expensive than ever. The Consumer Federation of America reports that the average new car now sells for nearly $50,000, with 1 in 5 buyers paying more than $1,000 a month.
By the time buyers finish paying off these loans, they've handed lenders thousands of dollars in interest, often far more than the car is worth. And because cars are depreciating assets, buyers are often upside down on their loans, meaning they owe more than the car's resale value. The average new car loses 20% of its value in the first year and about 60% after 5 years. So why are people financing them like real estate? The simple answer: they have no choice. Sticker prices have gotten so high that stretching payments across nearly a decade is the only way most people can drive something new. It's a setup that looks eerily similar to bubbles we've seen before. Here's another stat that puts things in perspective. Back in 2014, nearly 1 in 5 new cars sold in America cost less than $20,000. By 2024, that share had collapsed to just 8%. The budget-friendly entry-level car, once the backbone of the middle-class market, has all but disappeared. Automakers figured out the math. Small, cheap cars bring small profits. But SUVs and trucks, they're gold mines. So the industry slowly abandoned the bottom of the market and redirected consumers toward bulkier, flashier, more profitable models. That's why you see $50,000 pickup trucks everywhere. A model that might have sold for $25,000 2 decades ago now costs double. Before you add the premium trims, luxury features, and tech packages that can push it close to 6 figures. And here's the kicker: automakers aren't apologizing for it. They're leaning into it. Even Tesla, the company that once promised a $25,000 electric car, scrapped the idea. Elon Musk himself said making a regular cheap car would be silly.
Tariffs are nothing new. We've seen this kind of thing happen before, but at this hour, we're still waiting to see if and when these tariffs will happen. It's no secret that Michigan is a prime player in the auto industry, so experts say that this can hurt the businesses that make these car parts and cause higher prices at the local grocery stores.
In other words, the industry isn't interested in making cars you can afford. It's interested in making cars you'll borrow money for. It's not just the upfront cost of cars that's crushing buyers. Every part of ownership has become more expensive. Insurance premiums have surged into double-digit increases year after year.
His driving hasn't changed, but Edward Monzon, busy father of 2, has seen his auto insurance premiums jump about 15% this year.
It's frustrating that you're having another thing to think about in terms of paying more.
Repairs have gone from annoying to bankrupting. A small dent on a Tesla Model Y? $7,000 to fix. A scratched bumper on a Chevy Silverado? $1,500 gone. Gas prices, though unstable, remain far higher than they were a decade ago. And the bigger the car, the bigger the pain. SUVs and trucks guzzle more fuel, cost more to insure, and are loaded with fragile tech that makes repairs outrageously expensive. Modern vehicles are crammed with sensors, cameras, and electronics, which means a fender bender that once cost a few $100s now drains your savings. The irony is almost cruel. Car companies encourage buyers to go big, but the hidden lifetime costs punish them in return. To really understand how car prices spun out of control, we need to rewind to 2020. The pandemic didn't just bring empty grocery shelves and Zoom meetings. It ripped apart the global auto industry. Factories shut down, shipping stalled, raw materials like aluminum and steel spiked. But the most painful blow was the semiconductor shortage. Cars today are basically computers on wheels. Every system, from your backup camera to your airbag sensors, needs chips. When the pandemic hit, chip makers shifted production toward consumer electronics, laptops, smartphones, and gaming consoles. Automakers were left scrambling. The result? Car production slowed to a crawl. Dealership lots emptied out. Meanwhile, demand stayed strong because people still needed cars.
Well, here at Fitzpatrick's right behind me, before the pandemic, the dealership here, there would be cars lined up, ready to go. The same would be for the overflow lot right next door. Cars just sort of packed and lined up. That is just simply not the case at car dealerships across the country right now. So if you're looking to buy, well, you're going to need to be flexible.
That mismatch, fewer cars but eager buyers, caused prices to skyrocket. By 2021, the average new car price surged far beyond wage growth. And here's the strange part. Even after supply chains began to recover, prices didn't return to normal. They stuck at record highs. Why? The pandemic was a stress test, and automakers discovered something shocking. Selling fewer cars at higher prices was more profitable than selling more cars cheaply. Think about it. If you have 10 cars to sell instead of 20, but each one goes for $10,000 more, you're making the same revenue, sometimes even more, while producing fewer vehicles. Lower costs, higher profits. Carl Brower, an analyst at iSeeCars.com, summed it up perfectly. The COVID experience showed both automakers and dealers the upsides of higher margins and reduced sales. In other words, once companies realized buyers were willing to pay inflated prices, they had no incentive to go back. So even as the chip shortage eased and materials like aluminum and steel dropped in price, the industry clung to its new model: low supply, high prices. Here's something many buyers don't realize. Even now, automakers are deliberately keeping inventory lower than before the pandemic. It's not because they can't build more cars. It's because they don't want to. By restricting supply, they create an artificial sense of scarcity. Walk into a dealership today, and you won't see the endless rows of options that existed in 2018 or 2019. Instead, you'll see fewer cars, but each one carries a higher sticker price. It's a classic case of supply and demand manipulation. If you feel like you don't have many choices, you're more likely to pay whatever number is on the window. Dealers are in on it too. During the pandemic, they realized they could tack on thousands in market adjustments, and people would still pay. Now that buyers are conditioned to higher prices, those add-ons haven't disappeared. Some people argue that prices should have dropped by now. After all, raw material costs are down, and chip supplies have largely recovered. New car price fallen back to pre-pandemic levels? The answer is part psychology, part business strategy. 1. Buyers adjusted their expectations. Once people accepted $45,000 as normal for a car, $49,000 didn't seem like such a leap. 2. Automakers don't want to lose profit margins. Cutting prices now would mean billions in lost revenue. 3. Debt makes prices look affordable. As long as lenders keep offering 7-year loans, people focus on monthly payments instead of total cost. It's a dangerous cycle. Automakers learned they could sell less and profit more. Buyers learned they could stretch loans further to keep up. Together, this creates a fragile system where the true cost is hidden under layers of financing. There's another reason prices remain sticky: technology. Cars today are crammed with sensors, cameras, touchscreens, and advanced driver assistance systems. These features aren't just selling points. They're also costly to build and even more costly to repair. A small dent in a modern car can involve replacing radar sensors, recalibrating cameras, and reprogramming computers. That's why a minor accident can rack up bills in the thousands. Automakers argue that this tech makes cars safer and more efficient. And while that's true, it also gives them an excuse to keep prices high. In a way, Consumers are paying twice, once for the expensive tech upfront and again when it breaks. Not long ago, electric vehicles were pitched as the future of affordable driving: clean energy, cheaper fuel, fewer repairs, and, most importantly, lower costs over time. Automakers promised sleek, budget-friendly EVs that would make gas cars look outdated. But here's the reality. That dream hasn't materialized. Instead of cheap EVs for the masses, most of what's on the market today are luxury crossovers, high-tech trucks, and six-figure status symbols. Take Tesla. Elon Musk once promised a $25,000 electric vehicle by 2023. That plan? Scrapped. When pressed, Musk dismissed the idea, saying a cheap EV would be pointless. Ford took a similar approach. Their big electric launches weren't small compacts. They were the F-150 Lightning and the Mustang Mach-E. Both are stylish, powerful, and far from affordable. Why? Because building cheap EVs doesn't make financial sense. The batteries are costly, the production lines are expensive, and profit margins are razor thin. Automakers discovered it's much easier and more lucrative to sell high-end electric trucks and SUVs. The end result, the affordable EV, is still more myth than reality. Here's where governments come in. In the US, many EVs only look affordable because of tax credits. For example, the Chevrolet Equinox EV is marketed as starting at $35,000. But here's the catch. That number only makes sense after a $7,500 federal subsidy. Without it, the real sticker price is over $40,000. And those subsidies aren't permanent. In late 2023, Germany ended its E5 subsidy program to cut costs.
And talk about electric vehicles here. The state funding financial incentives in Germany to buy electric cars will no longer be there. They will be brought down and reduced next year.
In the US, a change in leadership quickly shifted policy. Trump ordered EV subsidies to be rolled back. Suddenly, cars that seemed within reach jumped thousands of dollars overnight. This exposes a big flaw in the market. The affordability of EVs isn't real. It's propped up by government money. Take that away, and many EVs are priced completely out of reach for the average buyer. While American automakers chase profits at the high end, China has taken the opposite path. Since 2009, the Chinese government has poured support into EV production, not just subsidies for buyers, but deep investments in manufacturing and infrastructure. Tax breaks for companies developing EVs, subsidies for consumers who traded in gas cars for EVs, long-term policies that allowed automakers to scale gradually instead of relying on short-term profits. The result? By 2023 and 2024, Chinese EV prices were actually falling, in some cases by up to 9%. Compare that to the US, where prices keep climbing. Chinese automakers also take a different approach to production. Many try to keep manufacturing in-house, controlling everything from batteries to electronics. That means less reliance on suppliers and more efficiency. They're willing to take losses in the early years to build scale, knowing costs will shrink once production ramps up. American companies, by contrast, focus on short-term profits. If a car isn't making money today, it's often cut. This difference in philosophy has created a gap that keeps widening. In 2025, China is expected to add another 3 million EV sales, continuing double-digit growth. Meanwhile, US automakers are struggling to sell EVs that cost more than many Americans earn in a year. This isn't just about cars, it's about global competition. The US is trying to build an EV industry while fighting uphill against Chinese efficiency, government backing, and scale. Here's why that matters. If Chinese EVs flood global markets, American companies could get left behind. And since US automakers have invested billions into EV development, failure could be devastating. But there's another layer. If subsidies disappear in America while staying longer in China, the affordability gap will grow even wider. That means US buyers will continue to face high prices while Chinese consumers see theirs fall. It's not hard to imagine a future where affordable EVs exist, just not in America.
And today we look at the rising cost of cars. Americans are paying about 38% more for a new car or truck over the summer than they were just 10 years ago. And the average transaction price for some popular vehicles is up nearly 50, 60, even 70%.
For everyday Americans, this tug of war means one thing: fewer options. Affordable gas cars are disappearing, and affordable EVs never showed up.
Here's the latest on inflation. The government reported today that in the past 12 months, prices rose just under 2.5%.
In our special series, The Cost of Living, Americans are sharing their struggles to make ends meet.
The middle-class buyer is left with two choices. 1. Stretch themselves thin to finance an expensive SUV, truck, or EV. 2. Hunt for a used car, which, thanks to shortages, isn't much better. Either way, the result is the same: higher debt, higher payments, and fewer realistic options. Here's the part of the story that almost nobody talks about. It's not just high prices that threaten the auto industry, it's the way Americans are paying for them. Total auto debt in the US is now nearly $1.7 trillion. That's bigger than the entire economies of countries like Canada or South Korea. And unlike mortgages, car debt doesn't build equity. It just drains wallets. Here's what's even scarier. Car sales haven't risen in step with this debt. In other words, people aren't buying more cars. They're just paying way more for the same number of vehicles. That imbalance is exactly what makes this feel like a bubble. Much of this debt is being carried by the riskiest borrowers, those with low credit scores. Known as subprime borrowers, these customers often face higher interest rates, longer loans, and stricter payment schedules. For a while, the system seemed to work. People signed up for 7-year loans and managed to keep up with payments. But as interest rates began rising in 2022, cracks started to show. The 60-day delinquency rate, meaning borrowers who are 2 months behind on payments, climbed from just 2.6% in 2021 to over 6% by late 2023. That may not sound huge, but in a massive market like auto lending, even a small percentage shift represents hundreds of thousands of people falling behind. And once someone misses a few payments, repossession is just around the corner. By August 2023, car repossessions had surged 28% compared to the year before. Tow trucks are once again making late-night visits, hauling away vehicles from driveways and parking lots. This is where the auto market starts to look eerily similar to the housing crisis of 2008. Back then, it was mortgages that people couldn't pay. Today, it's car loans. Both situations rely on the same fragile assumption that borrowers will keep making payments forever. But when too many people default at once, the system breaks. Lenders lose money, dealerships get stuck with repossessed inventory, and prices can spiral out of control in the opposite direction. Now, before we sound the alarm too loudly, it's worth noting that cars aren't houses. A house is a long-term asset. When the mortgage crisis hit in 2008, defaults caused a chain reaction that shook the global economy. Cars are different. They depreciate quickly, and repossessed vehicles can be resold much faster than foreclosed homes. That means the auto bubble may not trigger a global financial meltdown, but it could still devastate millions of households. Imagine losing your car because you fell behind on payments. For many Americans, that doesn't just mean losing transportation. It means losing the ability to get to work, buy groceries, or take kids to school. In short, while the financial system might survive, ordinary people could face life-altering consequences. Right now, the entire system is balancing on 3 fragile pillars. 1. Automakers keeping supply limited to keep prices high. 2. Lenders stretching loans longer so people can manage payments.
A new survey from the Federal Reserve found that lenders are getting stricter when it comes to consumer loans. The rejection rate for credit applicants increased to almost 22% in June. That is the highest level since June of 2018. The rejection rate for auto loans increased about 14% from just over 9% in February.
3. Consumers accepting debt as the price of mobility. If any one of these pillars collapses, the system could unravel. If consumers stop accepting massive loans, sales will plummet. If lenders stop offering 7-year financing, affordability will vanish overnight. And if automakers suddenly flood the market with cars, resale values could crash. Something has to give. The only question is what and when. There are a few possible paths forward. Prices could correct. If demand falls hard enough, automakers may be forced to lower prices or bring back cheaper models. Debt could crush buyers. If repossessions continue to rise, millions could lose their cars, pushing the market into chaos. innovation could save the day, a breakthrough in EV battery costs or manufacturing efficiency, but none of these outcomes will be painless. For now, the auto market remains a game of survival. For buyers, for lenders, and even for the automakers themselves. Cars were once symbols of freedom and opportunity in America. Today, they're becoming symbols of debt and financial strain. With average prices near $50,000, monthly payments over $750, and loans stretching 7 years, owning a car now feels more like owning a mortgage. The pandemic may have sparked the surge, but what keeps it alive is a toxic mix of corporate strategy, government policy, and consumer debt. If history teaches us anything, it's that bubbles always burst eventually. The only question is, will it be a slow correction or another sudden crash that leaves millions stranded, both financially and literally, on the side of the road?